Regularly scheduled school board meeting. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of January 25th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Joe. Any further discussion about that?
None. Fantastic job as usual.
Hearing none, I will we'll take a vote on that. So all those in favor of approval of those minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next up is the approval of the bond hearing minutes from January 25th as well.
I'll make a motion to approve bond hearing minutes.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Joe. Any discussion on those?
No. Thank you.
Hearing none. All those in favor of approving those minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? And that motion carries. Next up is the educational focus with the student assessment data. I think we're going to hear from Mr. Robert and Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, thank you. So you showed a packet with you. I know that also there was some data that wasn't labeled correctly, and I think Jason got that to you or Sharon did. So there's like an insert, additional insert.
Okay.
Look for that. Yeah. Just a couple of pages. It's basically the same thing that's in there, except for there was some, that first column here is not labeled on the original. So essentially what we look at, right, is broad strokes. So the reports that we're all going to see tonight and that you maybe had a chance to look at is just broad strokes. It's stuff that's come directly from our local and state assessment sites, whether it's the I report from New Hampshire DOE or it's our NWEA, which is also called MAP testing. The MAP testing is stuff that is our localized test that we contract with. The SAS testing, which comes from I report, is the state information. So if you try to follow along, I'll give you a brief overview if you like. So after the first page, you get a page that looks similar to this, and it is labeled overview. So this is exactly what you see when you log on to the website and you see, you don't have to log on, it's open. That's what you see when you look at our stuff. So this is the district as it compares to other districts, or as it also takes everybody who tested and compiles it to everybody to get our scores. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see, oh, sorry. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see what our assessment proficiency is by subject. That line, that vertical line that's between the red bar, oh my gosh, my apologies. I did turn it on. If you look at the horizontal red bar, and you'll see a vertical bar, which is 62.5. That percent is what the state is hoping to shoot for each district. That's our goal. That goal moves. If you look a couple of years ago, it was 61, and then, I mean, sorry, a couple of years ago, it was about 60. A couple of years before that, it was about 58, and it just continues to move. You'll notice that there is no horizontal bar, little line with the graph for the science. They don't have a science expectation for us or what they're shooting for one reason or another, whether it's that everybody's using the NGSS, thank you, science, or not. What's the reasoning? We don't necessarily know. So there's no real target data for that. If you move to the right, the assessment proficiency context is basically a comparison of Lin-Wood district to other districts or the state. Lin-Wood is blue, you'll notice that, and the state is that light green, and I know that one's not printed very well. So if you look at that box, Lin-Wood on ELA and math is going to be that little horizontal line all the way to the right. The ELA math is to the left. Part of that box and whisker plot.
Wait a minute. So if you go ELA proficiency, there's two lines on the right.
Yeah, so you see those two lines? You see these two lines right here?
Yeah.
Okay, if you look at the blue, that's Lin-Wood.
They're both blue on mine.
Well, that's because it didn't print very well on
That's
this
okay,
one.
which, under the ELA, is it the?
The one
left
on the
mark or
right is Lin-Wood.
Right,
Same thing for math.
same thing for math,
Switches for science.
switches for science, thank you.
Gotcha, and
Okay.
it's more clear on the next
Yeah,
one.
okay.
So that
thanks.
kind of gives you a brief graph of that. And then you have the proficiency over time in the lower right-hand corner, which is pretty self-evident. It goes back to the COVID.
Mm,
And then what I want to do is hopefully point out, and you notice too, that maybe what happened along the way since COVID to some of our scores. And I'll try to just whip through this quickly, and then I will give you that opportunity to look. So if you turn the page, you're going to see now a breakdown of elementary, middle school, and high school. It's the same thing, same kind of
Gotcha.
comparisons. And I think that one printed out nicer with the
It
colors.
did, it did,
Yeah.
thank you.
So if we look at our elementary school overall, they're doing really well. Middle school, they're doing okay, but we have some work to do. You know, and then the same thing with the high school.
Can I ask, on the
Yes.
right-hand side, it says State of New Hampshire, Lincoln Woodstock Co-op, Lin-Wood Public School. What's the difference between the co-op and the public school?
Co-op is district. So now you're comparing the elementary to the district. the
Gotcha,
state.
okay, thank you,
Correct.
thank you.
All right, so then oh, my fault. I was going too fast, sorry. So the green is the state, the blue co-op
Yeah.
is the entire district. And then the yellow is the elementary school. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to.
No, that's okay, thank you.
All right. If you turn the page, this is the one that people had asked for and you'd asked for several times. This one just is a chronological order of grades, of grade levels from dating, what, 7 years back. And then it just follows each grade group. And so this is the one where I look at like what was happening prior to COVID and what was happening after COVID. We were kind of stagnant, kind of declining, and actually our kids rebounded really, really nicely for the most part after COVID. Why? I think teachers and students were just glad to be there, maybe rejuvenated to be back in the classroom. And other than that, your theory is as good as mine, other than hard work and kids being motivated to be there and teachers too. So do you want me to keep going and explain some more of these, or do you want time to
I
absorb?
could just say something. This is the
Yeah.
one where, when we had reviewed some of these in the past, for some of you who've been in there, we would color code. So when you color code, that's the same cohort every year,
Right,
Correct.
okay? So you'll see 1920, the dark gray, and then 2021,
yeah,
you'll see the dark gray in the next grade. So it's the same
you're following
group
that cohort, yeah.
of students. Because right now, every year, it's a different group of students.
sure.
And they all
Yeah,
And you'll notice too, like the student population changes a little bit, whether there was an influx of students or they had left, but the numbers are relatively
sure.
same. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
The percentage, this is the percent of levels 3 and 4.
Correct.
What is that?
Okay, percent levels 3 and 4. 3 says that you are proficient in those pieces according to the state. A 4 says you're exceeding proficiency. A level 2 is approaching proficiency. It doesn't necessarily mean you could be there by missing it by one question for a level 2, but it doesn't mean you're really far behind. It just means that how many of those people are proficient over 3 or 4.
Okay, so just looking all the way on the right, 20 students, 58% of those 20 students are levels 3 or 4.
Correct. The next page. So now we're moving on from the state testing to a localized testing, which is our MAPS is what they call it, or NWEAs. So, and this is just real rough. It's a glimpse. There's not a whole lot except we look at this and we can kind of say, you know, where are we overall, right? You know, where do we need a little bit of help? But I want to caution you. So if you look down at grade 4, and right now I'm looking at the reading, grade 4, you'll notice that we have, you know, about 70% of our kids that are doing really, really well. They're in the 60th to 80, 60th to 100 percentile, which means on a national norm, they're above that 50%, right? So everything here is normed nationally in that percentile. But I'd caution you too, we have remember we have low population. So when you look at grade 4, they're doing really, really well and I'm proud of them. But we have 13 kids there, you know, who took that test, right?
Right,
And so, and then on the conversely here, like our largest grade level would have been grade 9 at that year. So grade 9 had 30 kids test at that time. And so when we look at that, a third of those kids in grade 9, when it looks at reading, you know, those kids, we need to help get them some extra work or extra help and be really diligent in what they're doing with. This is the reading and this is talking about fluency and understanding
Sure.
language.
there's also no, even all of the special ed students take the same
Mhm.
test with no
Correct.
deviance. Yeah, it's,
Yep.
yeah, so the straight A student is also taking the test with the autistic or whatever student, the special ed
For
student, so
students
it's,
who need, have special needs,
there's,
yes.
yeah, there's no
Yep.
difference.
Right,
So-
and although they do follow the IEP, some of them in the accommodation.
With accommodations, but they still have to take the same
They
test.
still have
Yeah.
to take the same test at grade level.
Right, at grade level.
And they sometimes don't get to have the accommodation that they would typically have to understand the concepts they
Right,
learn.
right. I remember that years ago, there was a couple classes that didn't have any IEPs and then some that just had mostly. So it was hard to
So
get a
these,
real picture.
yeah, these are the ones where we look at the student learning
Right,
objective growth.
Sure.
Because, you know, at the beginning of the year, you test them, and at the end of the year, you test them, and then you get the difference.
Right,
You know,
right,
and
yeah.
that will tell you each individual
And
student.
yes,
These
yeah,
actually go from fall to fall.
Right.
That's how
Gotcha.
these are printed out from fall to fall.
gotcha.
Um,
Awesome.
yes,
The other thing just to note about the Lin-Wood test is that it actually adapts to how
That's
well
correct.
the student is doing on it. So if they hit a series of questions correctly, it starts to bump up, it would raise the bar a little
Yeah.
bit to challenge them.
It's crazy.
And then it would raise up
Oh,
again.
that's
But
right,
if they
it's
miss a
all
series
online
of
now.
questions, it also adapts downward so that they're accurately assessing
Gotcha.
where they are, you know, with that test bank
That's
of
interesting.
questions against, you know, the national.
See, I'm going back to filling out with the number 2 pencil and the, yeah.
I'm saying.
Am I aging
Right.
myself a little bit?
But yeah.
So you're saying,
Okay.
so
That makes
So
sense.
They would stay at the same.
not
level,
everyone
they had to
got the
get
same
them up.
test.
Correct.
That's the same.
Once
Okay.
upon a time, when they started,
That's usually
right,
what we're-
it would change based off of how well they were doing, and then it picks up there the next time that they begin to take it. So like we're doing mid-year assessments right now. So however they performed in the fall, those questions started in that range. Correct. When they started it for mid-year, and then they go up and down, and then it compares the scores. And you get to see the growth.
And that's what we'll be talking about certain soon is like the growth versus achievement kind of stuff. And he'll elaborate a little bit more on that. The next section basically talks about writing and that's grammar mechanics and things like that. Again, it's a quick overview and then math. And then you'll also notice science, but science, we don't typically do that. We just had a middle school teacher that thought it would be interesting to see what would happen. And so she wanted to get a little bit more data on herself and the kids and figure out where we're going. So science is like kind of a luxury.
So can I,
Yes.
looking at the SAS data versus this NWEA data on science, the NWEA doesn't look so bad. There's not a lot of red there. The SAS data, you know, doesn't look so great. Is there any idea what the explanation for that is?
So my thought is this, it's our first year doing that, so we don't have a lot of data to figure it out for the NWA for this one. It's the first year for this one. And I'm thinking what it's doing is it's getting them more of a baseline, and I could be wrong, Jason, chime in, but it's giving them more of a baseline piece of data that we have for them based on grade level. When you look at the SAS testing to me is more application of the concepts of stuff that they're learning. And so I think that's a little more difficult. You know, they have lab setting scenarios. And to be honest, Jay, I don't necessarily know what those questions look like for the science piece. I could I can tell you about the math and the reading stuff, but I've never seen this. She asked if she could do it. I said, go for it. So I don't really know what to tell you. If you look at the next one, and this is what Jason was alluding to, and he's going to start talking in a moment. But if you look at the next two, they look like this. Okay, this is what we as teachers think is a truer measure than our SAS data, because it talks about how much each individual student growth and how much of that has occurred. And so what we're doing is we're looking at a grade level here. And if you look at the blue lines, right, the blue lines are our school, the diamonds are what's expected. So if you look at, you know, second, third, and fourth grade, and you see that those blue lines are well above or pretty close to where the diamond is. I can attribute that to a couple of things. One is Title I, because we get extra services there at that time. Two is the ESSER funds, where we ended up with an additional person helping to service our younger students in elementary, and then also went into like the middle school. So you can see that kind of growth. And again, that is the students' performance overall versus what was expected. So they're showing growth, but we also got to ask ourselves this though, is that growth on par with where they actually should be with the state staff SAS testing? So improvement is what we always look for, right? But does that still kind of transfer over to what we would expect on the SAS test? Hopefully, but if they're not at a level to where it's going to show that on SAS testing, it's a little difficult to compare. So remember, this is growth, and growth versus achievement is what we'll get to in a minute. So I'll let Jason talk about the inserts that he was giving me. So
Yeah, so there should be a couple pages taken together in there. And really what these are, they're just broken down by school. So you got the elementary, the middle, and the high school. And what we have on here are two pieces of data. One showing proficient or better, meaning 50th percentile is what we use to kind of coordinate this data, where you can walk through and say, okay, how many students took the test in grade 5, for example? This was last, for last year. There was 14 of them. And then what ended up happening is, how did they do? 8 of them were at the 50th percentile or higher nationally. So we just picked that as kind of the middle number, because that's the number that we use in the building to have conversations about where our students are at, what do they need, what are their next steps. So that's listed there on the top. And then on the bottom is the part that Mark alluded to in terms of, what else do we need to look at, right? It's not about just whether they're 50th percentile or better, but it's also about what kind of gains are they making? Are they growing? So what Lin-Wood does is they set a growth target automatically, and it's all calculated by all of the data that they pull in from around the country, all of the districts, and they have growth targets, a number of points that students, based off their achievement level, are expected to grow over the course of a full year. So down at the bottom, it's from fall to fall. So it's fall 2021 to fall 2022, which also includes, that summer hiatus for many of our students. But it gives that 1 year growth, and it gives you this comparison, because it also factors in that perhaps a little bit of regression or just lost knowledge over the summer, and that's okay, as long as we're being consistent in how we look at that data. So the bottom is actually, it breaks down, again, how many students qualified for this piece. So if you look at like grade 5, 14 kids took it this fall. Only 10 kids took it. Only 10 kids from this fall had a data point from the fall of 2021 to be able to assess that growth. So it's not that they didn't grow, it's nothing like that. It's just, there's a lot of different factors. Maybe they were sick, they weren't able to take the test. Maybe they're new enrolled students. Maybe some of the students that were here the year prior, they weren't, they're no longer here. So that accounts for some of those numbers in terms of how many students were tested that go into that growth category. And then the third column, as you go across, is just the percentage that actually met the growth target that was set by FWEA. That number So again, if we look at math, or from fall 21 to fall 22, 40% of them met their growth target, according to NEWA. Now, it doesn't mean only 40% of them grew, but in terms of comparing them again to national norms and looking at how they predict that growth model, 40% is what the number of students that hit that expected target based off of all the data that they take.
Can I interject for a second? Yep. Kind of what he's talking about, it kind of, you can relate this to it. So you notice, where do we expect growth? Where do we get our biggest bang for the buck? Kindergarten, first, second, third grade, we're giving them intensive instruction. And so as you get older and you start taking this test, you know, you might max out at a 235 or a 236 on math or something like that, which says that maybe you're in that 80th percentile. And so you go to take that next year, maybe your gains, that's what this blue part here is, your gains might not be enough. It's expected, but maybe you only gained 1 or 2 points. So that's how it works. So you're going to gain a lot in the beginning, and then towards the end, you know, and what's that? I think this is a little truer of what a kid's doing, because a lot of them, they know their scores previously, or teachers will tell them, and they'll actually say, well, I'm going to try to beat that this time. Whereas SAS, you know, a lot of them might have known that they were 3, but what does that really mean? Here, there's a larger number that they can play with, right? So I knew I could get a 185. I'm trying for a 200, you know, those kind of things. Sorry to interrupt.
No, and just to kind of go along with what Mark said, you know, NEWA has, like, the latest time that they pulled all this data together is 2020. And what they do is they actually have tables, the statistical tables that are part of their research and highlight of data that shows that trend as well. Like, you get the bigger gains at the younger, and that, you know, if you're starting off in a different place, at a younger grade level, or if you're a learner that's not quite achieving grade level, you're going to see bigger gains. They expect bigger gains over the course of time.
That makes sense.
You did such a good job. You explain that one too.
That's the fun one. Sure, we can do that.
We'll move on to this one.
Yeah, so the next page is part of NEWA. This is another, looks kind of messy.
What's the dot dot?
Yeah, so kind of connect the dots there. Yeah, exactly. What this does is this shows a snapshot of the entire district and all the students that took the NEWA, you know, within the last, you know, that last testing cycle.
You're excluding grades K, 1, 12, and a lot of 11.
And so what this does is it kind of breaks it down into our kids growing. You know, what does that growth rate look like for our students? It looks at their achievement level, and it's basically a plot. So if you take a look at that top right box, that green box, that means that they're achieving at a really high rate in comparison with their grade level. And they showed a lot of growth from their previous test score. As you work across the top, it's high growth, but lower achievement, meaning that maybe they're not at grade level, right? And the further to the left you go, the percentiles start to dip, right? Right where they cross in the middle is that 50th percentile that we talked about that I shared on that last document. So those are the kids that, you know, maybe they're not at grade level, they're getting a lot of interventions, but they're really showing growth in between these testing checkpoints. And then as we move downward, kind of the bottom left quadrant, those are showing students that are low achieving, and they're starting to, and they're growing. Their growth is kind of both below that 50th percentile, which, you know, that's the quadrant that we obviously watch. We try to focus on so that we can help those kids move up across that 50th% line.
It helps identify a lot of targeted interventions.
Yep.
So each one of those things is interactive, so I can click on that, and I can get a list generated of exactly who they are and maybe where they need some help.
And then that bottom right box is high achievement but low growth, meaning that they're knocking it out of the park, but they're not showing massive gains from test to test session.
I know we're throwing a lot at you.
It'll be a quick later.
From there, we go into the high school, the SAT data. And I did notice just today, I don't know if yours printed out that way, but yeah, there's a, if you look, it says 2022, 21. This should actually be 2020 right there, and that one below it is 2019.
Okay.
So it should go in order. It was mislabeled 22, 21, 20, 19. So again, you have in red highlighted and then blue on the right column is Lin-Wood students. There was 27 students that took that. It says that 7 of them of the 22 met both benchmarks. So if I took the test in math and in reading and writing, then, you know, there was 7 of us out of the entire 27 that fared in both of them. There was 26%, which is about 26% of the kids. 48% of the kids hit the ERW, which is the reading, writing, English language. 48% of them, so roughly half, and then about a third of them hit it for the math benchmark, and then 44% hit neither of them. And then there's a breakdown of individuals as to what percentage of the kids had a specific score overall. And then it compares it to the state and total group, everybody who took it as a junior in the United States and territories and so forth. Questions on that page?
Are the benchmarks are not mentioned here, right?
Your average range is roughly the 600 to the 1200 range.
Right, but if
Say that again.
the benchmarks are not mentioned. Right?
As far as like individual strands as to what they're testing, or
Yes,
so when
we're
you
seeing seven of the students explained in 2022 met their benchmarks. Those are
Correct.
just benchmarks of those.
okay, so if the benchmark for ELA was let's call it 800, and the benchmark for math was 800, 7 people in the total group hit both of those. Whereas the percentage piece, if you look at just like, even though 7 kids hit it for English language, for both of them, if you look at it for ERW, we actually had about half the kids really hit it for English language. Even right. It just identifies those who hit it for both.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
Yeah.
looking for? Yeah, okay. Other questions on SAT testing? The next page is your historical data for your AP scores. 2002, last year, what we had, I'm sorry, 22, yes. Thank you. I was like, oh, okay. So you'll notice we had 1, 2, 3, 4 course offerings. This year, we still have 4 course offerings, but those are where the X's are in the 23. Different courses because like your composition and literature, or language and literatures, those are opposites. This year, actually, we don't have anybody in the language AP test or AP course. And the same thing with stats. We don't have anybody there. Traditionally we do. Next year, we are looking to put more kids in the stats. There will be some BC calculus students. There's at least 1 that could do that, maybe 3. But if we're thinking that most of those will be juniors next year, what we'll do is we'll run a stats course next year, and then the BC calculus the next year, or the 80 in BC calculus next year. What else do we have? Yeah, again, I would say teachers are really pushing more for like a running start course. It's nice to have the AP classes available. Our performance on the AP classes though, over the years, I mean, hasn't been as strong as maybe as it could be. It's great to offer those. It gives them that exposure. And I'll say this again, I said this before, that I know many places that if you take a calculus in high school and you're going for engineering, science, mathematics, they're gonna make you take it over again. They want you to do their schooling. So at least it provides that excellent background for it. It gives them some introductory work to it. Yeah.
The AP classes, they're not required for college though, are they?
No, but what they do, you have the
I can see
option.
how they would prep it for it.
Yeah, so those are for kids that want to achieve. It's kind of similar to a running start, but a running start course would allow kids, if they pass the test at the end of the year, to get state credit for it if they went to a state school. And then the AP course would do the same thing, maybe. And then
Okay.
it might actually transfer to, like, let's say somebody's going to Penn or something. It might transfer in there if they get a 3 or better. I talked to a couple of teachers, and Matt, who was doing some work with the College Board, talking to them, but a lot of schools are making that, saying, you know, now we want you to get a 4 or better. So the bar is being raised everywhere. So that's kind of why, if we stick to the majority of our kids go to state schools, and if we can use those running start courses, it's really going to benefit them, you know, as far as like saving money and exposure to the work. And I think that's it. Questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's fun info.
It's a lot, and I would encourage you to look it over some more, and if you have further questions, just reach out, or we can talk about it more at the next meeting. No, you're good.
On this, this is the whole school.
So K1, no, 12, no, and some of 11, right?
So interpreting this sort of stuff, achievement seems like just generally we're going to be looking at like a bell curve of students, right? We have the majority of the students being in the middle with some outliers on the end.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of bell curve, traditional for achievement. For growth, we would, you know, this is sort of targeted growth, right? Like, so we're identifying where the students at last year, where they're now. And so we're hoping to see not sort of a bell curve of growth, but more of just across the board
Yes,
growth.
yes.
That we're not, it's not realistic, and it's not, you know, the norm to see that every student in the district is high achieving, right? That's just that's not how education works. That's not how individual students work. But I mean, we should see, to a certain extent, you know, or hope to see 100% growth to some degree, right?
Yeah,
And maybe not necessarily hitting the growth, everyone's hitting those growth benchmarks, but we want to see, you know, a lot of growth. It looks like, you know, basically, I'm looking at this sort of scatter plot.
Yep.
That we have a fairly good segment of students in that lower left, that pink lower left, right? So low achievement, high growth, that's normal, and that's good, right? We see people moving forward and getting into that, you know, the proficiency area. High achievement, high growth, obviously excellent, and high achievement, low growth, not ideal, but still good, right? We're still students are doing that, but there just seems to be a lot of students in that low achievement, low growth, meaning that we're not doing, maybe we're not doing enough for those students or figuring out ways to help those students in the best way we can. I guess, what are the strategies for differences? So, I mean, I like what you're saying. We can click on each one of those data points and identify, the student and give you some information about where they're struggling. And how. What are the interventions that we're using?
So a lot of the interventions, right, we look at, and I don't have it broken down to how many kids are in that spot right there as far as like who qualifies for Title I services. So a lot of times what we're doing, right, is putting together Title I services to look at what those kids need. So what does that look like? Those kids are getting like a double dose of language arts, double dose of math, no matter whichever target they're looking at. So if we're looking at math, ELA. So what they would get is double doses of that. So meaning like whatever the program is used in the classroom, they would also get that same program and then maybe more specifics as to what they're not learning. So for example, let's say it is 3rd grade and they're not quite putting together place value and using place value. We could target that with specific instructions using different models, whether it's the program we use down here for math, where we can pull stuff from Annalise record. She's got some stuff and she's a local person and it's all online, but it's finding out where they are and where their deficits are and then targeting that instruction. So whether it's in math or ELA, whether it's looking at reading and comprehension, we have stuff in place. What do they use for Title I for the programs?
It kind of depends on what they're targeting.
Yeah.
Whether it's fluency, whether it's comprehension.
Right.
The other piece to point out is that each of these dots in any one of these categories has strands underneath it. So if you were to dive into math, right, you click on Jason Robert, and it would pop down with here's how you did in geometry strand, here's how you did in algebraic operations, here's how you did in some of the other strands that there are, and then they actually suggest like, hey, this is the focus area. It's not always shocking to see 3 of those scores are solid and maybe just a little bit of off or even right on, kind of that 50% expectation. But then there could be one area that's weak for whatever reason. Could be instruction, could be something that it's taught at the end of the year and it just never quite gets there and it builds over time. That we can go in and say, okay, Jason needs a focus on geometry, and then we can click on that. It also drops down and says, these are the areas within geometry that Jason needs. So then we can go and say, take a look at our resources and say, okay, what do we have that can help address that need? And then use it as an intervention, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in Title I, and then give a boost and then see where they're at 6 weeks later.
And is that what we are doing?
So-
Are you
Yeah, so
doing that individually and measuring those 6 or 8 week?
The other piece is that this is one data point. We also have data points from our math assessments that we get math and different assessments within school too.
Okay,
So we never want to look at just one piece in isolation because
that makes sense.
some of the, looking at some of the names that fall within there, it's like the teacher knows when they took that test, they kind of guessed. Like there wasn't the, they weren't putting the effort in, or, you keep an eye on those types of kids that kind of show that. And, we want to make sure that we're doing what we need for them so that they also can test successfully, but it's one piece of data. So we could have data that says, yeah, low on this test, but are nailing and knocking out our classroom assessments.
Gotcha.
So there's those conversations that happen.
I'd like to say too, to add to that question is, so the other thing we do is teachers, especially in the middle high school, or the middle school and elementary school are doing like win time. So it stands for what I need. So there's targeted intervention there. And so teachers will pull small groups and give some more modified instruction to those kids that need it. That looks different at each grade level, but it's still teachers understanding where a kid is, who needs a little extra help, and built into the schedule is an opportunity for teachers to get extra help.
Perfect.
And then Tammy, just to answer your other question about are we doing those chunks of time, the answer is yes.
Perfect.
So right now we're doing, those benchmarks pieces, and then we have conversations about who are the kids across multiple data points that kind of fall into that
Yeah.
lower end, low achieving, low growth, and see what we can do to make
Excellent.
groups and check again.
Awesome.
Down the line.
Great.
And then there's also your kids who are on IEPs, and that we
Yeah.
have targeted goals for them that
Sure.
their instructors have to.
Thank you.
Some of these, it's sort of tough to really interpret, not really knowing, as much as you do about what these numbers truly mean.
It's got things to study.
But, we're looking at, so if I'm looking at like, so the grade 9 NWEA, this is just around like math proficiency. Well, grade 9 is generally a math reading. And, we have, say, 42, 55, and 47. Is that good? Is that, obviously that's not every student being proficient, but again, there's that sort of expected curve of students and where we're going to be, but, is that like, is that what we're shooting for? What are we shooting for here? Or what would be a reasonable expectation for our school district to see our expectations for these numbers? And setting aside sort of the problems with such a small sample size and what really these percentages truly represent. You have 2 students that have a bad day and we lose 15% proficiency rate. So, but I mean, what are we shooting for? What do you hope these numbers to look like?
I personally think that, what you mentioned earlier is like everybody grows, right? And that's the point. I mean, because I think if you have that mantra, and I think you all do, is that everybody can learn. Everybody knows something and they contribute, they can learn. I know that for a fact. I do. I don't care who you are. They know something. But the idea is then what? How can we get them to accelerate, right? That's what we want. And so our goal, I feel like, is to just get people to be as close to grade level or at grade level as possible if they are below, right? That's got to be your thing, right? We're trying to push them to be at grade level. Otherwise, learning continues to get more difficult. If they're above grade level, right, the sky's the limit. We should be pushing them as hard as we possibly can. We expect a lot more growth. But and I don't know if that's the right mantra, but that's what I know teachers strive to do, is to get those kids to a point where they can be comfortable with their peers. Because it can be uncomfortable. As a person who struggled as a reader and writer growing up, I know that if I'm not with my peers, I'm looked upon funny, I maybe lack confidence, and you don't want to be there. And so I think everybody recognizes that, and so their push is to get everybody at grade level. But if you break it down into growth, we expect everybody to grow some shape or form. At what rate? And that's kind of hard to tell. I'm glad you posed that question, because I wrote it down, and I don't know that I have a specific answer for you. Yeah.
No, I mean, I would echo what Mark said. It's really about, everybody growing, not just, and again, this doesn't show everybody growing, because I think we picked that growth target that's set by those national norms that they pull the data from. But I mean, I could go back and pull the numbers and say how many kids actually grew. And I think that's the model that we're looking for. Steps in the right direction. Whether they start at Lin-Wood in kindergarten or in 10th grade or 11th grade, the goal is to have them be in a stronger place when they transition out, whether it's a graduation or some other time.
I think that's where, and looking at this, and I realize you can't just look at one day's chart, but you know, going back and forth, I don't want to look at this as rose-colored glasses so much, but when you look at, you know, reading and ELA, those pink boxes, the majority is skewing towards the higher end. So I'd be interested to see what this representation looked like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and see if those patterns, those scattered blocks have, and if we've seen growth, because I agree with you, you know, growth is growth. Growth might not mean reaching 50%, but growth might be going from 0 to 10, and that's a win, right? I guess, yeah, year to year, I think this would be interesting chart to look at.
And the other thing with these charts, you can see the numbers set on the axes, the 50 and 50. Those can be altered as well to show, you know, like if you were to drop it down to the 25th percentile and look at, you know, because really, you know, that 30, 35, 40, it's low average. It's not 50%, but it's still within that standard of deviation, couple of questions, clicking on correctly or guessing wrong, you know, like that type of stuff. So like we could actually modify that.
Boost those numbers.
But 50% is 50%, and just
Right.
kind of a nice baseline to look at when you're talking about national norms and growth.
As the big picture goes, when I'm looking at the K through 12, I'm looking for everyone grows at a different level. So I'm seeing in my mind, okay, you know, Johnny's probably going up there. Hopefully grade. But I want to see a certain score in 12th grade. So if I see them getting up to the grade, sometimes they don't get the skills in the early grades.
I know what you mean, yeah.
But they don't understand them. So then all of a sudden you see this big growth spurt, they do, and then you want to make sure that by the time they're in 12th grade, you know, that they're going to be successful in that particular, they'll be within the average range.
Right.
Yeah, for the kiddos. Everyone grows at a different, you know, you can have a child who doesn't read for the first 3 years, but then all of a sudden, in the 4th year, they grow 3 grade levels. You know, but you never, and then there's other times when you have students who are at a second, they're in 4th grade, they're at a 2nd grade level. And within 1 year, they made 2 grade level increases. You're going to see a growth, a high growth rate. You will not see a high achievement rate because they're basing it on 4th grade.
Right.
So, yeah, the kids at a 50 percentile in 4th grade, that's average, okay. But the growth rate, he was at 2nd grade, or she was at 2nd grade. So we looked at students like that, you know, and so many different components, you know, when you're looking at one individual student at a time, so.
Yeah, I think you're right, though, Jay, is like, you know, we need to, what is our goal? Maybe that needs to be a conversation. What are we shooting for? And, you know, get a larger voice as to what that really means.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of like, look, you know, from our perspective, looking at the data and being able to say, okay, we're happy with where we're at versus we
Let's
really.
move all these other little dots into the next step.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, unfortunately, that's probably unrealistic.
Of course it
Right,
is.
you know, like, that's just how, that's education.
Right.
You're gonna have high achieving students, you're gonna have lower achieving students, you're gonna have a lot of people in between. But, you know, ideally, we're trying to help kids move along.
Improve that.
Right. You know, I'm just trying to, I've looked at these numbers a lot over the years, and it's just it's difficult to sort of get my mind around. You know, I see a 55%, you know, proficiency at 50% or better in 9th grade reading proficiency, right? And is that good? You know, is that considered good?
Yeah.
Is 42% considered good? Obviously, we have a couple that are 100%, but it's like 1 student or 4 students. You know, so
Right.
again, the data is of marginal use in such small cases, but it would be nice to sort of have sort of an idea of like, what are we shooting for? What would we consider to be you know, satisfactory achievement and satisfactory growth for students. Because it, you know, without really sort of having that target, it's hard to say whether or not, you know, how we're doing. So I don't know if we can, maybe we can
Do you think these
further
numbers,
discussion about that, about.
do you think these numbers are a fair assessment of what you think, where we are, where the kids are? Or do you think, because these numbers can be manipulated up, down, anywhere. I mean,
I think they're pretty fair because the majority of the kids, this is that data that's been collected for years on them. And it's recorded as to where they are and how they're moving forward and how they're not moving forward or at a rate that's fast enough. I think it's pretty fair.
okay. That's a fair answer, thank you.
These charts, these are the NWEA data.
It's also,
So, okay, this is NWEA for SAS
Yeah.
and NWEA.
this is NWA.
Okay, so these correlate.
Correct.
Okay. So if we're, I mean, I'm looking at this and what I see is in most grades, we're meeting growth benchmarks.
According to the data that's been collected, because it all goes back to all the data that EWA has taken.
Right, yes. The benchmarks that have been set on national.
Yes.
So our students are meeting growth benchmarks in most grades in almost all subjects, right? So there's a few outliers. There's a few with no data. I guess maybe that just means we're too small of a sample set, or is there no growth benchmark for 11th grade? On the other
At
side,
that point, I
maybe?
would say that they have not taken the test.
Okay. So I guess it's a little, I see this, and this looks like, okay, we're regardless of where we are achievement wise, and you know, we're working on that. We're at least seeing growth generally. Is that a fair characterization of what I'm looking at?
Yes, I would say the growth that the state norms are expecting from us, we are achieving them and more, right? In most cases. A lot of cases, we're right at where we're supposed to be achieving, yes. Right, so the projected growth, right? Those norms, that's the diamond, right? And so, yes, if you look at that, I would say we're doing what we're supposed to be doing according to their algorithms. So would we love to see them all like language arts reading grades K and 2, but yes, but
Yeah, I mean, that's,
but that's again, that's where
Yeah.
we get, you know, the ton of help for these kids. You know, that's what we want.
and generally, that's just a lot of progress.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So like, just for example, 7th grade reading, it looks like we're sort of felt, you know, quite a bit short of growth targets.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily. I mean, the expected projected rate is probably like, right, they want you to go gain 5 points and they've done maybe 1 or 2 points. So I wouldn't say that's quite a bit below, but it appears that way. Yes.
And
This year's.
And so if I'm correlating that with the graph here, that's looking at 23 students taking it and 6 of them making the target growth.
Picked the wrong meeting to show up with.
And it's strange because I mean, in that same class, you're looking at 56, 63, and 73% growth rates, and we're meeting that growth benchmark in other areas. It's a lot to think about. I think, you know, is it possible to just sort of have some further discussions about what we should be looking at? What are our expectations? What should we be? What's a realistic expectation? What does a good school look like when it comes to these numbers? And, you know, and how far off of that are we? And, you know, it looks like in some areas we're making those, but it also looks like we're falling behind in some areas. And I'm a little concerned about our AP test scores. It looks like since 2018, sort of steadily been going down. You know, now we're talking about potentially just eliminating classes altogether or putting them
Not
largely.
necessarily eliminated, we just don't really have a lot of people that are being, one, interested.
Yeah.
Two, recommended.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
And when you look at like this year's junior class, what is there, 16 kids? So as they try to go take, as they try to go into their senior year planning for that. It's not a whole lot of kids that are gonna be qualified.
Yeah, I think coming up with some goals or this is what we're striving for, because it's presented with all this data. You know, you look at page 1 and you just look at it and say, we're middle school efficiency, 44% compared to 64% of the state. Middle and high school were below everything. And you know, going back to an earlier point, it's about growth, right? But it's not until you have that conversation and you discuss it, but you look at this and it's red flags. And again, setting those, this is what we're focused on, this is how we want to address the this is an important stance to take, a position to be in. Because we all know that not everyone is going to be efficient. And do we want everyone to be above the state? Yeah, but it's just not realistic. It's not to say we should settle for that, but it's.
yeah, I agree that I think it, you know, for our purposes, you know, I'd like to be able to say, okay, this is what we're shooting for. This is what we have identified as a reasonable, achievable target for us. How do we make that target? And if not, what can we do to do better? And if we can, what works? You know, so try to help apply some of the lessons that we learned from this data.
Yeah, because if you can say, for example, no school ELA proficiency was low, but the last year we had 24% proficiency, right? So if you're making growth in that direction, that's a win. Right? Showing those strides for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Is some of the stuff available, some of this data just available online? Is this
The NWA data, no, you'd have to ask us specifically, you have to have a login and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the state stuff though is.
assessment? Is there any other questions on the student assessment? And we'll move on to communications.
So you have the town of Lincoln correspondence regarding the state park, the public meeting is coming up. To notify the people surrounding.
The town of Lincoln's just encouraging input or, you know, any concerns by anyone. Brief, I'll be as brief as I can. The skate park was originally going to go over where the riverfront park was planned behind the J&JR, well, what is it, behind the SAU office. back there.
J&JR,
I know, sorry, I'm dating myself.
1979?
Before you were born. Anyways, years ago, when we first had the ground tested, we were told, there's a few things that you should be fine, go ahead with your park. So then we started to go ahead with the park and signed an MOU with the skate park and raised all this money and did all that stuff. Now EPA has stepped in and under a brownfield grant and assessment, and we need about $800,000 worth of remediation, which means more brownfield grants that need to be written. it's gonna take years, 3, 4, 5 years to get that remediated enough to start building a park. In the meantime, the skate park folks have gotten some sizable grants that are time sensitive. I mean, and we're not talking a couple thousand, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars they're gonna lose if they don't break ground this spring. So in an effort to make that happen, the selectmen and the skate park folks got together and well, we're gonna look at the Kank and the community center. We looked at the community center and decided that in there, that would be the best fit, was to put the skate park at the community center. The selectmen want to hear from the local folks and just, we don't want to just all of a sudden change it, put it there, and people go, wait a minute, what happened? It was supposed to be over there. We just want to let folks know what's going on and get some input if there is any. And so that's why we're having 2 open public meetings, encouraging folks to come talk to us.
And it looks like the district is technically in a butter to that property.
Technically, right there.
We have a couple of right-of-ways that come to the edge of Pollard Road
All
there.
of
It
those,
looks
yeah,
like.
which makes the district of an abutter.
I mean,
Not affect us at all.
no, and I don't think that this requires any of our attention other than,
We just noticed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
notifying the abutters that we're having a couple of meetings.
I did not receive any correspondence.
And no, I just have the Department of Environmental Services. That was just the report that was received from the assessment that was completed in 2021
The tanks, yeah.
with the underground piping and that sump closure that we had to take care of. And that was taken care of in 2021. And just wanted to let you know I did report on that.
It's good. That's all buttoned up. That's a good thing. It's good when things are done.
Also, from the Department of Ed, the Director of People Services received notification for 100% compliance for the indicated 13, which is a monitoring process that we have to follow. And the state comes in and chooses one student. Grade 12, they just come in and take a file, pick it out, look at it, and go through and make sure all the paperwork is in compliance and they chose was in compliance.
I was super curious about this, so I looked it up. It's actually a high school and it's for 16 or older IEP students only. And it's, this component is the post high school.
Yeah,
plan,
transitioning.
Transition
right, from
plan,
16
thank
to
you.
older, right, it's a
Yeah.
transition.
It was interesting reading,
Make sure
actually.
that we follow the steps. in
I
that.
printed the 2 pages, but there's like 26 pages or something to the manual. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, monitoring in general, they can be any of the students, but this particular one is a 16.
16 or older IEP, yeah. And now we're good for, I think it's 6 years, every 6 years or something now. There's a rotated schedule of schools. They had it on the
They
thing,
rotate
yeah.
with the school.
Yeah, and not every 6 years and all the schools, they choose a few out of that group every 6 years, so it was interesting.
And then the other one was just the North Country Educational News that comes up. There's a lot of professional development being offered. And teachers are aware and they look to see what best meets their needs. That was it for,
And like I said, I did not receive any correspondence.
okay.
Next up is Deb, Business
I
Administrator.
don't really have much, just the manifest to go over.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. McGann.
Okay, so I did was I just reminders for everybody to keep in the forefront with all the different meetings and dates and due dates. And between February and March, we have a lot coming up. Maybe February 15th, which is next week, be a budget hearing at 6:30. Filing in the meantime is from February 1 to February 10th, 5 o'clock this Friday. And of course, your school district meeting is on March 21st. In the memo, I talked about the elementary school currently using Alma. That was a question or piece of information that came up for
Yeah.
attendance and grading. It's always been used for attendance and grading. And has all the information in it. Do you want to get into a little bit of what is not in it quite yet, Jason?
Yeah,
Maybe
so,
that's what.
sure, yeah, so the big component that isn't kind of not there yet is the live part for parents, the parent portal. It's not that parents can't have it, we haven't rolled that out yet.
Gotcha.
It's something that, you know, it was used to send report cards last year. We've done hard copies at the beginning of this year. Just to try to increase that communication, making sure people are getting that. What we're going to be doing is, as we move into Q4, so kind of that late March, beginning of April, is we're going to actually start pushing out and getting information. So how can they can access everything electronically, which will be, you know, not everything that a student does during the day, but you know, some summatives, formative assessments, things like that, projects, you know, typical grade book, so
Sure.
to speak, and how they're doing in terms of, you know, whether they're meeting expectations on them, whether they're approaching, and so on. And then everything will get, you know, report cards will be emailed out as we get towards the end of the year, and that's the intention.
That's already being done in the middle high school, correct? Okay, so this just phasing it in. Gotcha.
That might have been what those were.
Yeah, I was unsure. That was
Yeah.
part of something in the handbook and that it said it would all be done through Alma. I'm like, wait, I thought that was only middle high school. So, okay, I
Yeah,
gotcha.
but we
You're
haven't.
using it, it's just not completely.
It's not
yeah,
completely
okay,
rolled
gotcha.
out at the elementary. level.
Gotcha, okay,
Yeah,
Thank
report
you.
cards are typically a little more cumbersome
Yeah.
in the elementary school,
Sure.
so that's where we're having glitches. So
Sure.
we're getting it.
gotcha. Thank you.
Another question that was brought up was the driver's ed, the scholarships.
Yes,
That, the district itself never had the scholarships, the state did.
okay,
State did not.
Driver's education.
okay. So I remember years ago.
Fill out a
there was
roster, they've got like $150 or something per student.
Okay, and individual students apply for that, or does
Well,
the
I think
school apply for that for
The
the student?
school, yeah, it went through the driver's ed. I remember there was a roster they had to
Oh,
fill out, and
gotcha.
to give it to driver's ed. The state would send $150 for each kid towards the cost.
What is the cost of driver's ed now, do we know?
Huh?
What is the cost of driver's ed now? Do we know what it's going to be? It's like
La-
500 or 600,
Yeah,
800?
Last summer,
I think
I
it's-
paid for my son, not through this
Yeah.
particular company, but when we looked around, it was a range between like $750 and $900. depending on-
I think it's $850. So,
Ask an actual student now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's concerning, because that's a lot of money for a lot of families that,
With 150 off, that's a lot.
yeah, 150 is really not much when you're talking $850, it's still
yeah,
$700.
they don't have that aid anymore.
And they don't have that anymore. So it's all on the students, the
We've
families.
seen numerous students just not go through the program and just wait till they're 18.
And that's unfortunate. We still, my youngest is 27, I still get a percentage off on insurance because it took driver's ed. And that's huge.
We should talk to the law increases.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. There's no idea who our rep is now.
Should be on board. I don't know, you don't have to look.
It's my baby, of course it is. Yeah, there's gotta be something out there too. It's gotta be something that can be done without making it a budget item for the school. There's gotta be something that can be done.
So for your committees, you do have some several sets of minutes in the packet, you know, to review. We did just recently have a professional development committee meeting. It went well, reviewing the current professional development plan since 2020. It has not changed at the state level. The state would go every 5 years, and the state stopped in 2020. So we're just going through, standards have not changed. So we're just going through and looking at some of the items that are program-based or that we may have that have now changed. You know, like it says, give your list of, you know, support services that you give, what types of programs you use. You may use different programs. We're just updating the program, but the standards itself for the plan is still remaining the same. So just do it ourselves. Emergency Operation Committee did meet. We reviewed the updates of the plan, recommendations that were made, and we're just moving forward with what we can move forward with.
Nice.
A lot of the information recommendations are in part of the grant, the 100,000 for each of the schools. So we'll be, it's integrated into, a lot of it's integrated in that. So we will be able to meet the recommendations that they develop.
Now, did the committee have any input on the recommendations done by, was it Homeland Security?
Yes, when they did the walkthrough, we talked about it after we had a discussion before they did the walkthrough, and then they did the walkthrough, and then they, you know, we talked about it after.
Yeah.
And it's just what it is. They are just recommendations. I mean,
Right,
not
right,
something
right,
where,
right.
you know, I have to, but, you know, little things that we may have not thought of, you know, that could be a
Cameras in the
safety
wrong
issue.
places, stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Or additional, not in the wrong places, additional
gotcha.
cameras,
Right,
stuff like that.
right.
And did they have
Investigate.
more, did the committee have any more recommendations than was in the, no?
No, okay, well, as far as the money goes right now, we're gonna focus on like finishing the vestibule.
Right.
And
Those are the recommendations that they made, and that's.
yes, all their recommendations, so we're gonna
Perfect.
focus on that right now.
Good.
So that was it. That's it for me. I have more things coming up.
For now.
Thanks for having me. And you have the report. Some of the major highlights are probably the Martin Luther King Day Cooperative Advisory Classrooms. And we kind of came to a culmination the other day, and kids got together and they presented. That's going to be posted on the website soon. They're going to do some editing, they record it, and they'll have it posted so we can see the finished product of how kids used Dr. Martin Luther King's speech to interpret what it means to them as a group and kind of showcase those ideas of equity and
Nice.
tolerance and kindness. So it's very good. In service, you see that it's happening on Monday. The Kink, if you were able to go to the Kink Classic, I went through the day. I didn't go to the night one, but it was excellent. And some other highlights would be that, you know, Jason has booked Eric Pitcher from Berlin. He's a local author and he's going to be coming for literacy night. He's going to be doing some stuff with the kids and then staying later on and doing stuff with adults. And so it's going to be a really, really cool activity that he's got planned and more information about to come. And like I said, you have most of the stuff and that's pretty much it.
When are we doing Ryan's story schedule?
Oh, yeah. So Ryan's story, you'll know that we're blasting a bunch of that. And we're hoping to bring a lot of parents in. This is going to be next Thursday night, the 16th. Students 5 through 12 will be involved in pre-activities and presentation and post-activities with Mr. Elegant. And he's going to come and talk to a story about tolerance, kindness, bullying prevention, online kind of bullying. And then I'm really looking forward to the evening because we're bringing from 5:30 to 7, we're bringing in local vendors, kind of like wellness activities for adults to talk to, have questions, concerns about their kids, about neighbors, whomever. And so we're inviting the whole school community as far as parents goes, K through 12 plus neighbors and friends and relatives, whoever wants to show up. We'd love to have them. And then there's a post-activity afterwards that's going to be covered with kids.
I love the outreach that you did with that, the notifications and stuff. That was
There's more coming.
fantastic. Excellent. No,
Letters are-
that's great.
Personal letters are being mailed home for invitation to everybody to come, so for
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And Jason, did you want to talk about a little more in depth of the reading across America?
Sure. You'll be receiving stuff. And I sent an email, I think it was last night, to everyone. It's SAU email address. I don't know how often check them or not, but there was an
Empty.
email with an invite.
Every time.
Yeah, I mean, so we met as an elementary crew and then running some high school teachers about a week and a half ago to kind of plan out the month of March. Read Across America is usually tagged as a week. But literacy being as important as it is, we want to make sure that we kind of blow it up, make it a huge deal. It's been the entire month doing activities and reading and such. So what we did was we pulled together a calendar and said, okay, we're going to have a big kickoff event the day we get back from vacation, which, why not? You know, to kind of kick the month off as a whole school, elementary school assembly, K-5. And then all that week during various times, the middle school and high school language arts teachers have booked time that their kids can come up and do some park reading in classrooms with kids. And that's just fantastic because, you know, we've got everyone down here is looking towards being at the middle school, being at the high school, and making those relationships and connections. You know, we're doing door decorating. As Mark mentioned, Eric Kinder's coming down from Hampshire at the end of the month for a literacy night, where he's going to be doing some speaking at the end of the day with a couple of school assemblies geared towards K2 and then K5. Kind of about process and importance of reading, and some of that's going to spill into the evening event as well with parents and strategies for home and how to help the kids and things like that. And while that's happening, we're reaching out to National Honor Society and other organizations up at the high school to have them come as guest readers for that night, have the kids come in their PJs and do some reading and whatnot with them while the parents are part of that. That family side, that adult side, will be there. You know, we're doing some raffles, we're doing some trivia, we're doing some mystery books, and then we're also pulling together a list of emails are slowly going out to try to get as many community readers as possible, like police departments, fire departments, school boards. School board got their invites. I have hard copies here. If anyone wants to just fill it out hard copy, and I'll enter it in for you. You know, and really it's just about, you know, getting people in, getting kids excited about reading, literacy, and we got a few other fun things that will trickle in throughout the month. So,
Fun.
yeah.
The only other thing I would say is I'm not sure how long Rowan was expecting to stay, and I know it's getting late, and I would ask that if she did have to leave, that maybe we could go have her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just add one more thing? I would take classic, and it's all a little courier.
Was it really?
Yeah.
And that was a fun, I got to go see the middle school one, the night race at the high school. It was great. It was a great community turnout. The kids were great.
This is the first one I've missed, but it's always a fun event.
So yeah, I think, Rowan, welcome. It's your first night here. Hope to see you a lot, you know, going forward. But I think, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to, you know, if you had any report from the student body that you wanted to present to us, or any comments or anything like that?
I have a small thing that I just wanted to add, like, so possibly could be like, I don't know who I would talk to about this. I'm pretty sure it'd be like the guidance counselor, but more like college visits and things that the students can go to, like just to see what's going on with colleges and what they might think about going to, and more like pre-college things like St. Paul's. I know that I applied to that, but I was hoping that there was more.
You want more information and whatnot about.
These are
that.
opportunities I think would be good.
Interesting. Good to know.
Do they do the college fair and that stuff anymore?
Yep.
They
Yeah,
still do
we've
the
had
college fair?
numerous people in, and I know White Mountains Community College is coming in, I think, next week. I have not heard of any like larger four-year schools coming in recently, but I think what you're also alluding to hopefully is like maybe even taking kids out
Yeah.
on those trips. So those things have
Good.
been discussed, but we haven't planned them. I know, you know, Mr. Manning being new, he's a lot on his plate too, but I think those are things that are important and relevant.
So what, I mean, what's, from our school's perspective, what's the possibility of like organizing like a trip for seniors or I guess it would be juniors and seniors?
Yeah.
The possibility is no
Teen
problem.
Or UNH.
Yeah, we have bus money, we have funds, we have the transportation, I think is easily done. It's just a matter of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've done it every year.
Okay.
We used to before.
Right.
Before, yeah.
Well, you know, before, the before and the after, yeah.
Let me see.
Yeah, that is something that you should contact Mr. Manning.
And what's the St. Paul's thing that you said?
So
it's
summer
like-
programs?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
summer program where it's like starting college, basically, like getting you what it looks like, dorming there, like 6 weeks, I think. Oh, that's really neat.
And you do earn some credits to go towards
I'm pretty
college, yeah. You earn
That's been
college
done in the
credits,
past.
right,
My
yeah.
kids are there.
As I said, I've known students that
They
have done that.
apply
Absolutely.
there.
Is it your junior, summer of your junior year?
I think it could be sophomore and junior.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They go for like 5 or 6 weeks, like they're the door.
yeah, yeah. I've
So
known a
kids
few students that
follow
have done that.
So are you hoping to identify other similar opportunities or
Yes.
just, you know, finding ways to help make that process more accessible to students? Like the application process or?
I was
More
thinking
information.
similar, because it was pretty easy to send in the application. I didn't have much trouble on that. But I was hoping for like more similar opportunities like that. Students could-
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's definitely something that.
Yeah,
that
That
we
we've
work
done in the
with
past, so I
Matt,
could see
Manning,
Mr. Manning and he'd help you
Manning.
fill out the application as well. So you won't have to do it by yourself. Very interesting. It's good to hear.
Yeah, that's a
Thank
good
you.
question, yeah, good input. When you have the college fairs, do all 4 high school grades get to go, or does it just junior, senior?
No, it's.
All of them get to, good, okay.
We did that once this year. I'm not sure if that was scheduled, but we did a fall.
Sure,
Yeah, everybody gets to go.
excellent. It's good to hear that you want more opportunities like that, that's, now, your whole class is like that, right? Yeah.
So it is getting late. You know, this meeting is taking quite some time because we have a lot to digest with the student achievement numbers and things like that. So
Not
student
always
assessment
like
numbers.
that.
So, you know, you can, if you have stuff you need to do or just get into it, feel free. Otherwise, you know, obviously stick around as long as you like.
You're welcome to stay.
That was a lot of information, so please come back.
Yes, they're not usually this long and in depth and, you know,
That dry.
right.
All right,
That's a
so
lot of information.
committee reports, I know we've got a few in, you know, the minutes. Didn't we meet tonight?
We did not need to.
So then I guess it's just the second reading on the policies that we looked over last.
You're recommending them.
Yep. Um,
And it's supposed to be separate.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, I have it. That DM is gonna come up in the letter D under business environment board action. Letter D, it's not on.
I was gonna say,
Okay, good.
hey, so. Yeah, okay. I'm wondering why that's out, you know, that's not one that we're voting on right now.
One we're using.
When we, last week, so in CFA, last week when we talked about this, we talked about adding in something, this sort of indicates that the school administrative personnel is only going to be interviewed by the board and superintendent.
Right, the switch.
And we wanted to add in that it would also be, a number of other stakeholders. And it doesn't look like that was added. This paragraph 2, last sentence,
What letter was that one?
CFA, individual school administrative personnel. All applications will be screened by the superintendent and a number will be selected for interview by the superintendent.
And then it says applications from qualified applicants will be available to the hiring committee for review. Their review, candidates selected by the committee. That's the paragraph that was changed. By the committee for interview,
Okay.
invited to participate in the interview process. We may have to change the first paragraph too.
Yeah, I think we could just strike by the superintendent and the board. Just submit it, can be just put selected for interview, period, and
Period.
then
Oh,
the next paragraph explains who we're talking about. So
yeah, right, right.
I think
I
that cleans it
agree.
up. Thank you. That's all.
So can we approve that tonight with those, with
Yeah.
the change, that change? Okay. Everyone else, everyone else? So I'll make a motion, we approve policies BA, BCA, BCB, BDB, BDG, BEB, BEDA, BEDC, BEDD, BEDD-R, CB-R, CFA with tonight's changes, GBEABA.
A second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Jesse. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and that motion carries.
And I'll make a motion that we withdraw policies BAA, BKF, CFC, and CFC-F.
Second.
Thank you, Jesse. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and motion carries. Next up, staff nominations, recommendations, resignations.
I don't have anything.
Approval of the staff handbook. We did get a copy of that last week. Is there any questions on that?
I brought up last week about the conduct points, get now where it was in there,
Yeah.
last meeting.
Yeah.
And I don't, I have those notes with me, I might actually.
There was a
I think
reference
it was
in the handbook
page
to conduct
11,
points.
It
maybe.
was under
Conduct points is in
attendance,
the-
Yeah.
attendance section, and we've removed
We
that.
removed the thing on conduct points, okay.
Yes.
And that was a student handbook.
Well,
Maybe.
No,
It was
also
in
here.
the staff handbook,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it was just left in from before, and one of the things that just didn't get taken out, that's all. And the only other question I had was on Alma, but that was explained tonight,
Okay.
so we're good, yeah.
All right, I'll take the motion to approve the staff handbook as revised.
So moved.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Jasmine. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and that motion carries. Next up is the approval of the public school calendar. This is the, was in the packet, let's see.
I looked up all the holidays and all the everything, and there's no in-service days on Fridays in January, so we're good. There was one year, an in-service day on a Friday in January on a winter activities day. Years ago, and I'm like, that was an oops, we won't do that again.
So we're looking at a start date of the 29th of August with a 3-day week and then a 4-day weekend and then a 4-day week. Is that,
28.
what's that grade? Oh, yeah, first days, we got 28 days. So 4 days on, 4 days out. Ease
So I think it
everybody.
is 3, yeah, 3 days the
Yeah.
first week, 4 days the second week.
Those three are in service, those are teacher days. The
No,
yellow
but the
ones,
29th, 30th, and
Oh, yeah,
31st.
28th.
28th is
Is the
the
first
grade
day.
out boxes.
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
thank you.
no
Thank you.
worries. And then we get out on June 12th, which is phenomenal,
Yeah,
because we won't have any snow days. Right.
I did notice that when Mr. Privet was out and we put Mr. Robert in charge, the first order of business is to cancel.
I saw that too. You know, in all seriousness, it is
No wonder the
actually,
kids like it.
it's nice for them to have a snow day or two. My kids, Christine went 13 years and had two, and none of them were snow days. One was a gas leak, and one was the telephone pole was down at the front of, at the driveway. So it was kind of a bummer that, you know, a lot of kids went 13 years with never having a snow day. So, I mean, don't get carried away, but to have one or two is kind of nice for the kids, so.
One or two every decade. It's okay.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
So does anybody have any thoughts or other input on the proposed calendar?
This all matches what the North Country is doing and where our kids go, and so
Yeah, it shouldn't affect it.
perfect. I'll make a motion to approve the next year's school calendar as presented, the 23-24 school year calendar as presented.
Thank you, Tammy. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Jen. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Send that to Roland.
abstentions,
There you go, you get the first copy.
and that motion carries.
There's your perk for tonight.
You have to be there on
You said there was
time,
a
yeah.
section D.
Yeah, there's a D. It's under new business, but then we need a vote from the board.
Sure.
At this time, we're looking at policy DN, which is the equipment policy. And we have Chromebooks, approximately 40 Chromebooks that are still in good use. However, they cannot be used within the school because the programs that we're using now, this can't handle it, but it's still a good, you know, working computers, Chromebook. So what has come up is the senior center. We could work with the senior center, give some of those Chromebooks to the senior center and to the, what's the other one?
Lincoln Green.
Oh, yeah,
and
Lincoln.
Woodstock.
Yeah, Burton. And have students go in and help them train and get them to use them, and then those can stay there.
Yep.
So they could use them. So in order to do that, we need permission
Yeah, I
from
mean,
the board.
I like the sound of that a lot.
So can we put this policy up for discussion at our next policy meeting, because we're going against policy? The board authorized disposition of obsolete items according to the following priority actions. Number one, priority actions. Number one is selling to the highest bidder, which I don't agree in this instance, but if we're gonna do this, which I think we should, we need to redo our policy. Well, we don't have to do it first, but let's put
I
it
was
on the,
going with number 2.
but it's following priority actions. Number one is a priority, and if you can't sell them, then you give them away, which I don't agree with the policy here.
Oh, priority.
Yeah.
we can take it.
So I want to go ahead and, if everybody else is in
But that's what
agreement,
I'm
do
saying.
this, but let's put this on the list to fix this policy, is all I'm saying.
Kind of updated.
When if we ever have another policy meeting, let's revise that.
So can we do what they say without changing that policy?
Oh, sure, with the
The
board,
board
whatever we
can, the
want.
board can do that.
Absolutely.
We-
Well, we're going against policy.
Well,
So-
that's what, I think what she's saying is
Right.
we should look at that policy, because
Yeah.
I think most of us, or all of us seem to agree that, you know, the way that they're looking at it.
This
getting rid of these-
proposal is the right thing to do.
Right, and provide legitimate opportunity for,
Students,
you know, the students to take an active role in the community. And
Oh, I
That's all
agree with
some
doing
community
what we're
services
doing,
stuff.
but
So I think we should, you know, I think we do need to, you know.
Yes,
coming
Change our
from the guy
policy
that
to
gave
comment.
away some shop equipment,
Yeah.
Well, right.
holy cow. I think we move ahead with this and address the policy at the next policy
at
meeting.
least was accused of.
I mean, I would agree that I think it,
Before.
I think I can. do
Yeah.
that.
Following
Yeah,
priority actions, so it
priority,
should
number
be
one,
one
here's the
each
number one priority.
Yeah.
That's number two priority. Number three.
Yeah.
We just need to fix it. And I don't think we need to do it prior to making this vote tonight. I just want it out there. Let's fix this policy.
Or
And
do one of the
I will make a
following.
motion that we move forward with Judith's proposal for the Chromebook computers.
so that's a motion. on-
That's a motion.
Um,
We need a second, anyone?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Is there a time sensitive issue? Because to be frank, I think we should address the policy first.
I was gonna say with the intention, add to that, with the intention of addressing the policy.
We've talked to them a little bit about it.
Yeah.
about-
We have a meeting next week, right?
Yeah.
So we
We can do it
can,
next week.
we
We can do a
can,
policy committee.
But that's what I said.
yeah,
That we should do the policy before we did
I
that.
agree.
I just don't,
Prior to getting rid of the Chromebooks,
We
you
want-
want to do the
we want to make sure that we're, yeah, I mean, I think that we have, the policy is,
Can we amend the motion?
Is next week's meeting only a budget hearing, or is there a school board meeting as well?
There's a school board meeting following the budget hearing.
Right.
And is the facilities committee meeting? No?
No.
So can we have a policy meeting prior to the next, even if it's just for this one? And if it is just for this one, we'll come 10 minutes early and not an hour.
Right,
early.
and then you'll take your
Perfect.
vote at the next meeting.
Fantastic.
That'll be
Awesome.
fine.
yeah.
Thank you.
Because that'll give us time to post it. So that the policy's
Perfect.
posted, everything.
Yeah.
And this
Excellent.
also, this
Okay.
also hasn't been run by like students yet as well, but we
Yeah.
have to try to
Sure.
interest to look to work with like
So what do we do?
National Honor Society, the Student Council, any other students. that we like to-
I
We'll
withdraw
put it
my
out to
motion.
everybody.
I'll withdraw my motion.
And I think, we still have a community service requirement.
Yep.
Regulation.
Right.
That was Tyler's as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great idea. I don't know what came up with it, but great idea. Thank you for that.
All right, so that is. So, continuing business,
Yeah, I have something else. too. I'm
oh, sorry, in business
The
regarding
new
board
business,
action.
the new business.
So-
And the
oh,
new
okay,
bu-
sorry.
and the new business is that we have 2 snow days. Picture the calendar. Your last day of school is on Thursday. We have 2 snow days to make up.
So
that would be
far.
Friday and Monday. We're not having any more snow days. So we've done this in the past, and what we've done.
No, I agree.
is taken-
Especially when it doesn't snow.
Sorry,
taking the
sorry.
snow, taking the snow days and adding them on to current school days in March at the end of the day. 3 days for 2 weeks. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is an hour and a half added on, 2:30 to 4, 3 days a week. And then there's another week in March where you would do it again,
No,
Tuesday,
I've
Wednesday,
got a
Thursday.
kindergartner that you can't do that too. You'd be climbing these walls or sleeping. That's the other one. I know a first grader that would be asleep and usually is by the time she gets there. So,
I mean, can we do that?
yeah, no.
Well, no, I just mean as far as the contracts go, like the Paris contract, with the extra hours and stuff like that, can we do that? I'm not against it.
Last
We guys
year,
have done it.
we waived 2 days because we had enough hours in, just on of days in.
Well, I think-
Why is that not a possibility
Did
this
we
year?
waive the sewer days?
Yes, we waived, the sewer days. Oh,
That's what I
yeah.
did, so.
Oh, gotcha. So technically we have 4, including those sewer days.
The other thing I see being a problem is parents, families with just tight schedules, that it would be really difficult for them to rearrange for those random Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that week. That's just a thought.
I'm just thinking that's a
something I could hear complaints about.
long day for 5 and 6 year, 7 year
I
olds.
mean,
Well, it's either that or
don't
make
picture
it
them
up at
sitting
the
at
end,
a
right?
school desk, continuing to work until 4 o'clock with the whip, you know what I mean, type of thing. I mean, modified in a way in which the high interest will continue to be. That's totally, I mean, has to go through the board.
So for instance, it would interfere with one or two of the robotic days. And so those kids that are doing robotics would go to that STEM activity and then looking to do a couple of different things. Could we do STEM activities for everybody from that, for that hour and a half for those 6 days? Or some kind of cooperative thing. Looking at the middle high school, we've had a lot of success now doing cooperative advisories. So what we could do is do cooperative advisory activities as well, where people are getting out there intermingling. It's not necessarily a study session or just more cramming of work. So there's opportunities to do things that could be proactive. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's even using walking areas that we've done in the past and created that like as a wellness opportunity. So we understand what you're saying as far as the
We
entire
also have
active. it's a
preschool
long
and
day.
kindergarten that have basketball practice from 4 to 5, 1 day a week. So now you're adding, when is basketball over?
Usually February.
February, so that wouldn't be
I
an
mean, the
issue.
reason why we said March.
Well, what about, so there's 2 days we have to make up. What about making one of them up on Friday and doing 1 day a week for 3 weeks with that other one, the Monday? And leaving Friday, go to school till Friday. Have Friday be the last day of school. The makeup day that we would have on Monday, do 1 day a week for 3, because you say it's 6 weeks for 2 days. So it'd be 3 weeks for 1 day. And do 1 day a week for 3 weeks.
No, I think they said 3 days a week for 2.
3 days for one.
Yeah, it would be 3
Right,
days.
for 1 day. So that one Monday, do one
Oh,
day
one day,
for
not
3
Friday.
weeks in a row. So every Wednesday for 3 weeks, we'll do the hour and a half. And that makes up that one snow day. And we'll keep the Friday one. Instead of getting out on Thursday, get out on Friday. It's not going into the next week. It's 1 day a week, you're staying an extra hour and a half for 3 weeks in a row. I don't pick a day. I don't care
Okay,
what
because
day.
Wednesday is the after-school program for this and over.
Then do Thursday, do Tuesday, I don't care.
Wednesday and Thursday, they're up there.
Whatever, it says, whatever day works, if it, I don't care if it's Monday, it doesn't matter, it's, but 1 day a week for 3 weeks and make up that 1 day is easier for me to swallow than 3 days in a row for 2
So,
weeks.
so if a student leaves at the regular scheduled time.
Yeah, what happens if a parent is like, I can't
It's
change
like,
my
it's like any
schedule?
other thing. If they sign out, they sign out. They're, I can't prevent that.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you don't, the kid leaves early for house from you don't have to make that, that's what you're saying, yeah.
what about for students that go to ASB, could we coordinate like somebody to come over and pick them up still at 4? Like they do at 2:30?
Oh, I'm sure that they would, yeah, I mean, if it's 1 day a week, I'm sure that Tara would
Yeah, I'm
accommodate
just trying
that,
to think of all the.
yeah.
There's a lot.
Good thought, though.
We would run the buses.
Buses would have to run at 4.
Everyone would get picked up at 4.
Yeah,
That would be my suggestion, is 1 day a week for 3 weeks and make up that 1 day and go to school on Friday. And I'm just thinking of the little
What if
ones.
you have a snow day on one of those Mondays?
oh boy.
There are no more snow days.
Oh
What if you have
boy.
a
I just,
two-hour-
he
what if you have a 2-hour
promised.
delay?
No, he promised.
We don't worry about those.
Yeah.
I mean, and if the blizzard of 78 happens and we have a few more, then we'll revisit it, but
I know the high schools and stuff would be fine with it, but the younger kids are
sure,
gonna
you're
have.
right. Yeah, and that's what I have is I'm thinking those, the ones that I know that, yeah, they're not gonna make it 3 days in a row, 2 weeks in a row. It's not gonna.
Because you're probably ready to slap me over here to just the extra day in the summer too.
I understand not wanting to, come back for that one Monday. I get that. But we're already here, Monday through Thursday. Might as well do the Friday and make up the 1 day.
Don't teachers come a day or so after we close? No, okay,
They leave the same day as the
yeah,
student.
okay,
It's in a typical year,
right,
because a student's 180 of the day
right,
is a teacher's 186.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Now, how does that work for the graduating seniors? Do they have to make up
They
that?
still, it doesn't get interrupted with graduation.
So they still get all their
So
hours.
it doesn't affect-
They don't have to
So
stay the
their
extra day.
graduation would be the previous Friday.
It'll stay the same.
Right, that'll say. That's already allotted in the state calendar for the seniors.
Sure.
I mean, I would say that as a parent of a first grader, I share Tammy's concern about, the kids,
Well, just-
especially the young kids' ability to, especially 3 days in a row, 2 weeks in a row, to be there until 4 o'clock. It just seems like a lot. I would certainly be concerned about that. It's coming back for that Monday is a pain, but
How do you feel about the 1 day a week for 3 weeks?
I mean, it's certainly better.
I mean, how does that work with the partner program? Because I know they're only contracted for certain hours too.
This logistics, you gotta figure out to go with this, either way you do it, but
That's something that they could work out, but
Yeah, well, I know, but will that cost us more stuff like that? I mean, it's,
it's still a day. Still a day that they would have to work on.
right. And they do the hour and a half, 3 weeks a day, 3 weeks instead of coming back on Monday.
yeah.
So it's a trade-off.
Well, I know, but it's still somebody that has to drive over, they can't get 4 o'clock or whatever, so I don't know how all that, but
Right,
they're not contracted to do that. That's
Right,
what I'm
right,
saying.
right. the paras though, I mean.
No, the paras
I
are
think
fine,
they
they're
would-
fine,
I
paras
think
are fine, I'm talking about the
Every
directors.
single one of them would rather stay the hour and a half.
Well, make the
than come
money,
back on
exactly,
Monday.
they don't care about that,
Right.
They'll be all right.
but it's the directors that are only contracted to be here for certain hours.
That's for them to figure out.
Well, no, that's what I'm just
Yeah.
saying. that's why I
Yeah,
threw it
done.
out
It's
there.
done a couple of years
I was gonna
ago.
say, I remember it, yeah.
And we actually brought this, we brought this topic up, I'm sorry. to interrupt. Yeah. We actually brought this up to the teacher leaders as well, and the teacher leaders said that this is kind of what they would prefer if they had. They, you know, not necessarily looking at extending it past the weekend.
I could understand.
But I hear your concern.
Oh, I-
Understood.
And I'm wondering if, you know, if we can identify some days and maybe not necessarily say, okay, we're gonna do these 3 days in a row in these particular weeks, but identify days where maybe it makes sense. You know, to have the kids there for an hour and a half for something happening, or, you know, like you said, the robotics club or something like that. And that's a small subset of our student body, but if there's,
Maybe on the days we have an assembly or something, or
yeah, I mean,
Some type of
Out of the ordinary.
programming.
I would love it if they would just maybe take a field trip, and the field trip would be extended, not necessarily have to be that for buses, you know.
well, I mean, they all do, all of the classes have a field trip.
Yeah, but a lot of them come back before buses out, because of the try to plan it with, so it's within their day. Yeah. Just like that.
But we can go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
I would be in favor of 1 day a week, 3 weeks in a row, or not, or, you know, every other week, or however, but not 3 days in a row.
So I think I gotta look at
At
the
all.
logistics of it all a little bit better first, anyway.
Yeah.
Before we can even vote on that.
I agree. I tend to prefer that, go to school on Friday and then try to figure out, make up Wednesday with some extra hour as more reasonable.
I just made some input.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
COVID ESSER or strategic plan, anything on those?
We're all set.
Okay. Budget,
Yeah, you'll be getting a copy of all of the information you need, cheat sheets and everything for next week, so we can have it ahead of time.
Nice.
Yeah, or if you need anything, that's good. It's specific, we'll have the budget, we'll have the warrant articles. We have information on the different warrant articles.
Awesome.
next up is the school board audit questionnaire correction, and I
Good
can
catch.
address this. This was, we did that audit questionnaire. One of the things one of the caveats that we put in there was that we did sell the bus to John Hamm. That happened this fiscal year, not last fiscal year.
So the next audit, we'll have to put that
So
in.
we will have to remember, hive mind here, all of us, to include that on the questionnaire for next year.
Yeah, we have Sharon, we're good.
Well, and
We are
I
all
was, even when
set.
it was brought up, I was looking at the dates and I was like, something is not, like, this just happened. Why are we, but I couldn't quite
No, I know.
articulate
And
that.
it didn't
So-
even come close to.
So I did,
yeah.
so just so everyone's aware, and we're on the same page, I did sign the paperwork with the correction of removing that from this year's. So it does.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it does not reflect us having sold that, because obviously it didn't happen that term. So that's,
Thank you for
that's
that.
that. Nothing else changed. We heard from Rowan, so is anything else for, all right. I don't see a teacher representative this evening, and I don't see any community members except for Mr. King. No?
We don't have any non-public or anything?
Excuse me.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Don't forget to
That's
sign the